Greetings, everybody. Scott Stevens here. Glad to have you with me on this Friday afternoon, this Friday evening, or Friday night, or if you're even in Australia, it could be Saturday morning. It's the weekend, regardless. And as we see weeks draw to a close, seasons draw to a close, summer rapidly concluding as farmers race to get food and their harvest out of the fields, as something we've been watching on the longer term models, those longer range events. Really looks like we're beginning to see a big shift from what had been summer into fall. And as I mentioned earlier, fall is just a transition from summer. And we've been losing daylight very, very quickly. We begin solar winter come the 5th of November, that being but just 3 weeks out. All right, let's start with this. I'll come over here to roll through Twitter. And if you're catching this on the replay or afterwards, then throw up a hashtag replay in your city as well, so I know where you're from. And then we kind of can begin to guide and direct you into some of the content, and I can provide that for you. All right, we'll start with Judah. He always provides good content. You know, he really does regularly. Looking at October duration snow cover extent. And granted, we're just now approaching the latter part of October, literally today. And through the first half of October, we're beginning to see across Eurasia, Europe and Asia, October 2020 in the red. So we're above some of those drier years, but continuing to climb day by day by day. And not quite as snowy as winters of 14 and 15, but nevertheless adding to it. Now, through today and through Monday, where we've got an Arctic push now advancing southward through Montana. Great Falls looking 8 to 12 inches. Some of the other locations farther out over those eastern plains, maybe 5 to 8 inches. So not quite as much, and less as we move into the lake states. That's going to change. That will change as we really begin to crank up the lake effect machine next week, and certainly even into the week after, as the lakes remain not as warm as they were, but still warm. And they're just open. They're exposed, and with the lake temperatures in the 50s and 60s, when we throw some 0, minus 10 degree air over that, that's really going to evaporate, going to pull a lot of heat out of that. All right, it was a snow party for the kids. So kiddos in Butte, Montana, so said Weather Nation. This was yesterday. And the kids, you got to do it. You got to enjoy the snow. Beautiful night in London, Ontario. Feeling very thankful for the colors. And it's just appropriate that we get these trees transitioning, get those saps, and get prepared for the cool winter, because I'm telling you, it's cold. Whereas the models, one of them I was looking at was ushering in 50 degree below normal weather by the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th. So 10 days or so out, we've got that kind of an Arctic intrusion coming on down. A little cross-polar flow and throwing in a big, deep dive. And northern lights showing up as we move into these northern latitudes. As we move through GSM, Grand Solar Minimum, the sun's electric field, the sun's magnetic energy impacts every other single planet in the solar system, and Earth is obviously being the third one in the row. We're kind of close to the sun when you compare us to Jupiter, or certainly to Saturn and the outer planets, but nonetheless, we're greatly impacted by what happens at the sun. And as the magnetic field has weakened, so has ours. That means it does not take a solar storm and a CME, a coronal mass ejection, to excite the upper atmosphere. And we're seeing the nitrogen and oxygen, the red being the oxygen, the green being the nitrogen, constituting greater than 3/4 of Earth's atmosphere. So largely, every breath, a fat 3/4 of that is nitrogen coming in, with the other 20 some odd percent, 21% being oxygen. Only trace amounts of argon and carbon dioxide are the rest. In fact, CO2 is less than 1/10 of 1% of the atmosphere. So in my eyes, it's kind of ridiculous that we're seeing that. However, downstream of this massive fire, this Cameron Peak fire that has been burning since the 13th of August, the winds now strong out of the north and west, and there's the plume as caught by a passenger aboard a commercial aircraft. As that plume, and we'll see it on satellite here in a little bit, continues to progress off to the east. All right, national preparedness level has been dialed back. It was 5 to begin the week. It's now been drawn back to 3, and wildland fire activity continues to moderate through the country. One new large fire was reported in Arizona, where they haven't had a great summer monsoon, and the winter rains have just not been a whole lot yet. We had a little bit of snow back the end of the first weekend in September, but nothing for the past 50 days. So, in 7 other fires were contained in Arizona, California, Idaho, and Nevada. International firefighting resources will begin to be released over the weekend, meaning they can go home. All right, Arizona still dealing with 4 fires, California 17, Colorado 3, Idaho 10. That's down from 16. Montana with 11, and I'll bet within about 4 days' time, those in Montana will be taken down to just 1 or 2 that will continue to need some attention and some hot spot wrapping up. That big fire we just saw from the aircraft, this is the Cameron Peak fire just west of Fort Collins, and we've been able to see some jumping, but it looks like this little guy on the ridge on the other side of this creek was able to be contained. This is not what we want to see. Are these embers being blown by these strong winds, jumping fire breaks, and then igniting on another ridge? And then you've got to pull assets off the main fire and then go stop the hot spot, stop where it's spreading. So it's really been a very, very challenging summer in Colorado, in Idaho, certainly in California, but we're beginning to get these events under control. It's a long process. All right, here we are in northeastern Colorado, and you can see those plumes still going on. And with a wave coming in, a little shortwave activity coming in from the northwest, that's kind of kicking up the winds. It's bringing in some cooler weather, and eventually some snow. The snow has been. Let's zoom back out here. Regional image. Let's come on up into here. And the snows have been contained up into Montana and far northern Wyoming for now. This event is largely going to be well east of these fires that are still active. Here's the fire still going off in California as well. So if we can get these in Idaho and Wyoming and Montana under control, then we'll be able to redirect those assets. All right, a quick look out just to see where we're going to get some precipitation, kind of jumping to the forecast side of things. Running all the way out. Let's see if I can't run this out. We've got 348 hours of the 384 hours have been downloaded from the computers, and then we'll run this out, and I'll play this back, and we'll see the snows. This is this weekend snow falling across Wyoming and Montana, even into the lake states and the higher elevations of northern New Hampshire and into Maine. And a lot more snow is coming, especially as we run this out to 22 to like 27 October. Looks like another nice Arctic wave is coming in. So Colorado, those fires will get some help, but it is about 10 days out before we really put down some healthy snowfall totals on those fires. All right. In the meantime, record heat tomorrow, still Southern California and Arizona. We've got Blythe and Winslow, Imperial at 102, Vegas at 93. Hard to believe that 93 is just a degree shy of the record high of 94 back in 1991. As we begin to see the sun, the day, a length of the sun now at or about 11 hours with 13 hours of darkness. That kind of takes the edge off that. Even through tomorrow and then into Sunday, even fewer records into Monday. There are some cold highs showing up with Billings at, come on, just stay there, buddy, 33 degrees for Sunday and 36 in Rapid City, an indication of that cool air that's coming. 1 or 9 in Palm Springs yesterday, 7 back into the single digits for Daniel, Wyoming. And then the tropics, there's kind of a subtropical low. It's not fully tropical and it's not extra tropical, meaning it's all cold. It's kind of that hybrid, just south-south or east-southeast of Bermuda, and the formation opportunities through 5 days right at about 60%. So they'll watch it closely. It's this little curl out in this direction. There's a lot of dry air on the western side of it, and then being drawn into the circulation onto the south and southeast of it. So in many ways, that'll inhibit it, but the waters are still relatively warm. And if the upper air situation remains conducive for development, then I would expect 2020 being the way 2020 has been, that it will develop further. The big news will ultimately be the series of these ripples coming in from the northwest. And this is just the first one. This is the satellite imagery. So that is what has happened. And then the good the good showers, bringing in some nice rain for New England. They had such a dry year that this rain is certainly beneficial. These were sunrise temperatures across the Rockies and the Plain States. You could see the teens and 20s, widespread frost, the cool weather absolutely in place. And look at some precip through the Hudson Valley, lower Hudson Valley, 3/4 of an inch to 2/3 of an inch, fairly widespread. I don't see any totals over an inch, but as dry as things have been, it can certainly absorb that kind of water. You get it at Bennington, Vermont. There's nearly an inch and a tenth. Pittsfield, Massachusetts, through the Berkshires, and even into the central part of Massachusetts, between a quarter and about a fat inch. Even in New Hampshire, a little bit more up in that direction. So that's certainly beneficial. They can use the water. Let's get everything wet, saturated, and let those trees have a drink before they have to completely drop their leaves and go get ready for the winter time that's come. So the cool high pressure settled into Arkansas with dew points, Little Rock, and that surrounding area, dew points in the 20s. So nice and dry, and that allowing for a very cool start to the day. And now that the sun is setting, temperatures dropping rather quickly out in that direction as well. And the higher humidities have been confined out into the Gulf, way out into the Gulf, as that cold front continues to press south. Thunderstorms, really only Florida, South Florida, Miami, the Keys, seeing those rains with the other showers a little bit heavier into New England. There's the steadier rains from Albany, the capital district, up through the Green Mountains and then into the Whites in northern New Hampshire, and pressing on into Maine, where again, they're very, very dry summer, getting a little bit of relief. And then the cool air coming out of Canada, and this adding a little moisture on top of the snows that fell in Montana yesterday and will eventually tomorrow fall into Wyoming. So that's the upside. All right. What we've been dealing with, and even with the cold that's coming, it's this bloody ridge out west. It just does not want to let go and let the rains and the cooler air come into California. This guy, if this pattern stays in place, this is absolutely a La Nina year. And if that remains in place, that means the Pacific storm track has to crawl up and over it into the Yukon, into Alaska, and then dive down. And then with this deep low over Hudson Bay, over Western Ontario, over Manitoba, just will throw surge after surge of cold air. There's another one right through here, dropping into the middle of the nation. And as we have talked all week long, the development of this tropical storm, it pulled up over Cuba. That happens not this Sunday, but next Sunday, and then gets honestly absorbed into this event and turns into a monster storm over eastern Canada. And as this develops, it just completely taps what is termed a cross-polar flow. Pulled over from Siberia over the top of the North Pole and then through the middle part of Canada, and then deposited into the eastern U.S., central and eastern U.S. The model, the latest one, begins to bring a little bit farther west. This College of DuPage is where this data comes from. It all comes from the Weather Prediction Center back in D.C., but a couple of pipelines out to different distribution points. This one being the College of DuPage. And this guy, this low, developing through Wisconsin. We're 225 hours out. So that is Sunday afternoon on October 25th. And then this deep low. And well, here's our back here, this monster, this big black eye crawling up the coast. If that hits, this is Rhode Island, Block Island, Provincetown, Massachusetts. That's almost a Sandy-like event where we have a combination of a deep cold low entraining a hurricane. So this is something we will be watching very, very closely over the next 10 days. This is going to be an event worthy of our attention. And then once that lets go, then the cold opens up coming from Canada. And lake effect snows 1, 2, 3 feet, UP of Michigan, the western shores of lower Michigan, Lakes Huron, Lakes Erie, deep into the Niagara frontier. All the way through, down the Mohawk Valley and into the Capital District of New York, all on target for some very, very chilly and winter-like conditions. It won't persist through the winter, but it's going to set the stage for some very chilly conditions. And in fact, Even today, we can see through Canada where you got the little white numbers, and maybe I'll make this full screen so we can make this a little bit bigger. Minus or 19 degrees below normal, 23 degrees below normal, and much of the West, you can see California 18 above, 12 above, 13 above, 8 above in Arizona, of single digits above through New Mexico. But as we progress this out, I'll just play this. We can see the cold, the first batch spilling into Texas and then retreating, warming up for the middle part of next week. But ultimately, this cold then drops all the way down into Wyoming. There we are, Rawlins at about 45 degrees colder than normal, through the Front Range, Pueblo at about 36 degrees colder than normal, all the way through the high plains of Texas and across the Rio Grande and into Mexico as this cold, dense air slips south. Almost the entirety of Montana, at least 25 colder than normal to 35 colder than normal on Monday morning, the 27th of October. Play this out, and then the cold progresses off to the east, and we do begin to get some moderation by Halloween Day. We'll look at this a little farther. Let's go east and see how this, well, let's play this and watch this move off to the east. Now, we get a nice warm up for next Friday. So we'll have another week through Kentucky, through Ohio, through Pennsylvania before the cold sets on in. But absolutely, it comes to an end by the time Halloween arrives. And then it eventually hits everyone, with maybe the exception of Florida. Again, this is a bit of a distance out, but it's absolutely going to be on the chilly side. So that's something we'll watch closely through the next 10 days or so. Even the guys back in DC at the 6 to 10 day outlook, bringing in the opportunity of bitterly cold weather through the northern plain states, and now 8 to 14 days, or essentially 2 weeks. They continue with the nation. The East Coast at or above normal, and then just the West Coast at or above normal, with the bulk of the middle of the nation getting ready for much, much cooler weather. So that's what we'll watch out for the weekend, is how this Arctic event begins to develop. When we talk to you on Monday, we're also going to throw in on another perspective, a little bit talk about crops, where we are, where harvests are across this continent. We're far ahead of last year. Last year, the spring was so cold and so wet that compared to last year to this year, we're almost twice the amount of harvest is already in the bins. They're out of the fields, and that's the good news. So as we go into this winter, there may be a hard date where, if the corn isn't in, the cold is so great that we end up seeing some kind of damage. I think it does, Gregory. Riddle me this. Does atmospheric spraying of the silver dioxide and silver iodide no longer work to make rain? And didn't sine waves cancel tornadoes and hurricanes in long ago lab test science research? Still, if so, why all the warfare? Because people are probably simply just not aware of it. And then there are agreements across nations. And if you have this super government superseding local jurisdictions, and they're the ones doing it, and they're aware of Canadians doing what Americans are, or obviously it's happening all over Europe, and they're under one umbrella government, and then they're connected to the Americans and Canadians, then it's just one organization that would then not have to tell the others. But we still had, coming from Idaho Power gladly would take their silver iodide out, alertify the relevant authorities, and then go try to squeeze another 10-50% of snow out of those mountains, because that was water ending up in their watershed that would end up inside their dams and their power production capacities. That happens still to this day. And even if they spent, I think the last time I saw one of their budgets was under $10 million, it's worth 50, 60, 70 million dollars in power production to their bottom line. So it's absolutely worth it. So we'll see if we get a change in government come November, or at least a little greater awareness of some of these these deeper embedded projects that are 50, 60, 70 plus years old, because it's old technology doing it, even if we have new tools that are affecting the end. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. Michelle, thank you for the Massachusetts, Central Massachusetts update. Yeah, You guys have been so dry back there. I'm grateful to see some rain coming and getting those streams and things hydrated out before the cold and everything freezes up for good, because it's just healthier. It's just a better way to start spring with everything uh, not stressed, unlike what's going to happen out here in the West. With that cold coming out here in 10-15 days, it's so dry. It is so dry. It took, where I am in the San Luis Valley, it took until the 1st of June for the first inch of rain to fall. And since then, we've only had 2 additional inches. That is it. And one of those inches came 8, 9, 10 September in the form of snow, and I've had a trace since then. So some of these mountains in the Sangre de Cristos are in crisis, and we're just grateful that we haven't immediately in this area had to deal with the fires as dry as it's been. All right, I'll catch you on Monday, and have a good weekend. In the meantime, just keep your eyes out.